Unless you've been living under a rock. Hold on. Unless you've been living under a rock, it feels like to me, because it just seems so obvious. Guys, men are walking away from the idea of marriage for sure, for various reasons, and relationship at all for other reasons. And I don't think the women folk quite get it yet, but we're going to delve into it a little bit more. We're going to watch an interview by Chris Williamson, who I just found talk about living under a rock. I was like, how do I not know about this interviewer? And Nicholas Eberstadt, something like that. Anyway, he's a statistician type demographics expert. Anyway, welcome back to Far From Eden. If you're new here, welcome to you. And please hit like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Getting better about remembering that. So let's have a look at what the stats basically say. What do the demographics say? You guys know I'm always talking about like Gen X, boomers, millennial. You know, I try not to talk about different races for obvious reasons. But I mean, people are always like, oh, that's a stereotype. I'm like, don't you understand when you go to advertising school, they teach you how to appeal to various demographics because it works, because it's true. I mean, stereotypes are usually based on reality. So it's just that when it doesn't look favorable, people reject it. The truth does hurt. I don't know. Everybody was raised differently. Okay, let's have a look.
I'm currently kind of obsessed with the role of men in the modern world, their retreat from relationships, their retreat from friendships overall. Have you considered if there is a broader dynamic going on here that ties together the general sort of malaise that men are finding themselves in?
Well, I'm not a philosopher, but I do demographics and I can count. And I mean, I'm a 67-year-old grandfather with 4 kids, right? And so I am so far from the forefront of the battlefield right now that I can kind of read it the way I read science fiction and try to kind of understand it. But
at least he's honest about that. You know, there's a lot of boomers and trad cons, like the Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles types, that are in complete denial of the reality on the ground. This guy is at least like, he's like, I'm gonna let the numbers talk. Let's hear it for the math guy.
The idea that let's see, how do I put this for a family audience? The idea that young men would not be interested in real live women would have been kind of absurd 50 years ago.
Did you see, so my favorite or most terrifying piece of research that I've seen recently was from Pew. In 2019, 61% of men said that they were looking for either casual or long-term relationships. In 2023, that number has dropped to 50%. 1 in 2 men between the ages of 18 and 30 aren't looking for either casual or long-term relationships. Now,
that people need to stop in their tracks. That is, I think we're beyond the canary in the coal mine. Boy, his face says it all, doesn't it? He's like, because I think we know what we're saying. If they're not interested in casual relationships either, it means they're not even interested in, you know, sex. And that is, it's completely against their biology. And so what could be happening that is such a strong and powerful force to stop the human male's drive to reproduce? It's a big deal. If we saw a species in the wild doing this, we would be alarmed. We would be talking about endangered species. We would have programs at zoos. But all these trust the science people don't seem to care. You know, I mean, how many women are going to cry on TikTok sad about the divorce that they are filing for? And how many of them are going to realize, like, it's you're the problem. Men don't want to play anymore. They don't want to play anymore. There are so many MGTOW guys that have never even heard the word MGTOW. They're just gone. Like, they're out, they're done. And they've never heard MGTOW. They've never, it's not a movement. It's not like you don't join the club. They've just gone, I see what's out there. I see the risks. I see the so-called benefits, and I'm done. I'm just done. And to be done at, 20, what is going on?
Well, for the men that are listening who have been through that age bracket or in it, you understand the power, the reality distortion field that is the male sex drive between the ages of 18 and 30. The fact that you can have something that happens that can overcome that is wild.
Yeah. It's like science fiction.
What's going on? Come on, Nicholas, put your best philosopher tinfoil hat on and give me your ideas.
Yeah, sure. I started looking at this. We're getting away a little bit from Men Without Work, but I think I'll wander back to it. I started looking at this in Japan, the numbers about Japan, about 2 decades ago, when young men and women were not only saying that they were less likely.
That, you know what? Japan was the canary in the coal mine. I remember Japan. It wasn't, I guess I didn't hear about it as long ago as he did. But I certainly heard about Japan and what was going on with their men. And I know there's a term for it, and it slipped my mind, for the men who were like, goodbye. Goodbye to, females and relationships, etc. But, people are just so blind. They're so blind. And I haven't seen this. I didn't watch it. I saw the little snippet in the beginning, and I was like, oh, we're going to watch this together. And I don't know. Are they going to have the guts to say, the women are being impossible? The women are bringing nothing to the table. The women, are they going to say it? Or are we going to have some kind of, what is going to happen? Is this going to be like the men in church making excuses? Or is this going to be some, well, it's not how it used to be? I'm so curious to know, is this 67, did he say he was 67, right? Is this 67-year-old dude because that age is still well, if you saw my other video, women are holy and honorable. I can't get that phrase out of my head. It's burned in my brain. They're not holy and honorable. That's blasphemous. None of us are. Anyway, is he going to be of that mindset? Is he going to still be sugar and spice and all things nice? And I also want to know, does Chris Williamson, does he know what's going on? And he's just kind of like, let's see if we'll talk about it, or, kind of like what, I want to see how it plays out. I wish I could say I had my hopes up.
Likely to have had sex by given, age 25, age 20, whatever, but also saying that they're less interested in this. And at the time I thought, well, everybody knows that the Japanese are just separate from the rest of humanity. Yeah. They see us as all gaijin. They see us as all unspeakably weird. This is just some Japanese thing.
Yeah.
Little did I know that this was the leading indicator for where everything else was going to be going.
Yep.
And I had assumed that we were just in our regular garden variety family decay thing in, post war America. But then this new eruption comes along, and the wonderful little devices kind of turn out to be turbocharging this, or at least complicit in some sort of way with this. And I again defer to my boss, Mary Eberstadt. Mary has I won't say argued, but
hold on a second. His last name is Eberstadt. He just said, I must defer to my boss, Mary Eberstadt. So are we headed down Simp Lane? Because you're going to sit there and be like, yeah, my wife is my boss. Are these points, are you racking up some points because you're about to try to hold women accountable? And if you don't know that phone is a big problem, and it's a big problem because women are on Instagram and social media and hanging their everything out for everybody to see and getting messages and inflating their egos and getting all kinds of attention constantly. He doesn't see that as an issue. It seems. Maybe he's about to say it.
But she has ominously mused about the possibility that nurture and wanting family and wanting children is not something that is hardwired into us in our DNA inviolably, but rather is something more like a muscle that we develop through use and through seeing, the same way that little cats know how to climb down from trees if they live with other cats, and they get stuck up in the trees if they don't have cats to look at.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like a mimetic.
Yes, exactly. Rene Girard, a mimesis, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean that's the musing of it.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, so there's a guy, Stephen Shaw. You familiar with Stephen?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah, so he did Birth Gap, which is a fantastic documentary. I know that you're big on your.
I talked to him a while ago. I haven't seen the documentary.
He was in Qatar with me, so he had a debate a couple of days after me. So we got to go for a bunch of lunches and dinners while I was out there. Also brought him on the show. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I mean, going back to the Men in Work thing, but also feel free to fold demographic collapse in as well. How worried are you about all this?
Well, I'm worried about it.
I think we just skipped a whole bunch of stuff. They were talking about nurturing and it not being like natural. This is actually something I've been thinking a lot about, because I've been thinking about how women are always described as nurturing and empathic and empathetic and all of those things. And I'm like, I'm really not seeing that. I'm not seeing it as an instinct in women. I'm seeing them like leave their kids alone. I'm just seeing them not be nurturing and sweet. And if you are that, how do you leave your baby in childcare if you can possibly help it? How? It just seems like you would have to pry my baby from my hands. So, and I know women who have had struggles and have done whatever they had to do to homeschool their own kids. They did without. And so when women, you're making a sacrifice when you choose to do something other than raise your children. And I mean, look at abortions. There are women who believe it's a baby and will still get an abortion. And you can give it up for adoption at the very least. So I don't think that women are naturally nurturing. And like I said, this is like something I'm sort of working on and thinking about, because you're certainly not going to read this anywhere. What I see is that women will, bear with me, this is going to be something. But it seems like women act more nurturing and behave more nurturing and empathetically and all of those things, and more loving and affectionate when they are when there's a man as the head of the household, when there's a man sort of in charge, and she respects that and loves him and respects that, and you know what I mean? It's an accepted relationship. It seems to me those are the women who have all of that. And I started thinking about, and this is for you science people who are like, give me the science facts and not religion. Well, think about this. If I'm a female and I need to survive in the wild, I need a man to do it, right? And once I get this man chooses me, right? And I'm his woman. We're talking about, we're in the wild. And I depend on him to help keep me fed, help keep me protected and sheltered, right? So what do I do in response? Well, I help cook the food and I help prepare everything and I help take care of him and when he's ill. And I bear his children, which is the main reason he went and got me, because he doesn't need me otherwise. He can cook his own food if he wants to, But we're talking about, in the wild, cave people, whatever, out on the plains. So he got the woman to bear his children and continue on his legacy. That's his instinct. Well, so we're talking about, well, why would a woman be nurturing? Well, if I want to keep this man who I know doesn't really need me, but values me as the mother of these offspring of his, I definitely want to treat those offspring right. I definitely want to raise them up and please him with how I deal with them. And I think there are instincts that help me do that. Now, like I said, this is like just I'm kind of pulling this out of my head, out of observations and other things that I'm putting together, but I think there's something there. And so it's interesting that you do see mothers that are sweet and all the things we kind of started just associating with mothers when they're true wives. So anyway, just kind of took a little intermission to say all that. Okay, he's stuck. I did not know I froze him there.
But as a citizen, I'm worried about it as a researcher. I'm worried about it as a parent and, a grandparent, somebody who'd like to see, our society continue.
That should have been number one.
Things can turn around. Things don't always head in a linear direction. In fact, they seldom seem to head for very, very long in a linear direction. This 50-year trend in the exit from the labor force is a pretty long linear trend.
I don't know.
It's exceptional in that way, I think.
I don't know.
What'll turn it around, I think, is not going to be economic and structural change. It's going to be a change in people's viewpoints and values and metaphysics. We've had, as you know, we've had a couple of
metaphysics?
Great awakenings in the United States in the past. We've had other little eruptions. It's going to be a change in mindset, and I don't see why we can't.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be critical. Is he saying things can change because things will change when people change their minds about a lot of things? That's what I just got. I don't know if he's trying to be more specific, but that's what I got. Well, the thing is I don't think they're going to change their minds because there's propaganda. Clearly there's propaganda to first to make women a certain way, and then that has then affected the men. In my little humble opinion, I'm not a fancy statistician like Nicholas Eberstadt. I think that's his name. I'm just a college dropout.
Can't have a change in mindset. As a social observer analyst, I can tell you that our tools are poor enough that it takes us a while even to recognize when a change has already started. So for all we could know, this conversation has already started.
It'll especially be a long time to recognize things when you refuse to put any blame of anything ever on women. I'm not saying you have to say it's all our fault, but you have to you don't even realize your brain won't go there. You don't even realize your brain is not even maybe it's feminism. In the last 50 years, gee, what happened in the last 50 years? Well, I'm not good at math, but 50 years ago would probably be 1973? And so 1969 was no-fault divorce. End of the 60s, sexual revolution. Abortion, Roe v. Wade, 1972, right? 72, 73, something like that. I'm sure this is just a giant coincidence. What do I know? I am just It's just confirmation bias. I'm sure it has nothing to do with anything. Nothing at all. It's probably climate change.
And too, blind and weak to have detected it yet.
Are you alluding to the fact that a social change to be able to give some sympathy, support to the chunk of men that are in this 7 million?
Not just, yes, of course, empathy and support. I mean, we have an extraordinary empathy gap in the United States today. We can't even, people who are in the intellectual classes and the describing classes can't accurately describe the arguments of people with whom they disagree because those arguments are bad and evil. They can't even do the intellectual thing of describing this accurately. I mean, that's a huge empathy gap.
Okay.
But more than that, I think finding spiritual and other meaning in life takes you outside of yourself and reattaches you to humanity and to eternity.
No.
That's going to be a challenge.
Oh, he was so close. He was so close. He said, blah, 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 that reattaches you to humanity. That's the problem. We're way too attached to humanity. That's all we think about. Humanity, materialism. He's right about to eternity. He's right about to something bigger than ourselves. We need to recognize that. We need to recognize what our Constitution recognizes, that the government doesn't make the laws in a good and in a free land. The government doesn't make the laws. God has already made the laws. And what we need to do, if we're going to have a group of people running some stuff, basics, right? We have to put a document in place that recognizes who is actually in charge and recognizes the freedoms and everything that we already have. I swear, if I hear one more person say constitutional rights, you don't have constitutional rights. You have rights that the Constitution recognizes were given to you by God when you were created. The Constitution does not give you any rights, but, a lot of people who don't even think about God wouldn't even question it. So I feel like it's all tied together.
Given how atomized our devices have made us, if you want to go secular with this, right, and you want to say, join a local pickleball club, pick up trash, look after the local dogs, join an art class, do yoga, do whatever, right?
Yep.
For as long as you have a incredibly convenient, incredibly distractible, highly distracting device that sits in your pocket, getting yourself up off the couch on an evening time is going to be hard. If you're spending 2,000 hours per year on the couch playing video games, smoking weed, there's a very high bar for you to get over there.
Amen. And I can't tell you what the next big innovation is, whether it's going to be a chip in the head or what the next
virtual reality or whatever.
Virtual reality is already here. Sure. I mean, it'll get better and more enticing. It's going to have to.
The older I get, the more I think these Amish, they know what they're talking about. I remember being younger and being like, oh my gosh, they're so weird. They can't even have a television. Like, why is it corrupting? Why do they think technology is so evil? Lord, do I feel dumb now? They knew. They get it. Because it is. It's a distraction from what's important. And it's all about, again, humanity and what's right here and what's right in front of you and this life, and not what's bigger than you. Not the greater purpose for why you're here and why you were created. The universe just didn't explode and all this order just happened. Even evolution, you wouldn't have all this variety of order.
To come from people themselves, and it may be It may be a revulsion. It may be a sad learning process, but I don't have any doubt that that we will not entirely be enslaved by this. There'll be some sort of a reaction which will, I think, help to open people's minds again.
Every single morning for over 3 years now, I've started my day the exact same way, which is with Element in water. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and
his ad. So let's stop screen. Stop screen. I thought I was stopping screen, and now I have a weird blue screen with shapes on it. I'm still learning. So that was a little bit painful because that man just didn't seem to have a clue. But I also am like, it's like he has a wife and there's no way he can go on there and talk about how it's women. I mean, I just don't think he can. And I don't think he has a clue. And that's okay. Like he said, he's not a philosopher, and that's a part of a bigger conversation. Please go and check the whole interview out, because I'm sure there are other little interesting nuggets in there. I know that they were alluding to a section about, men not wanting to work anymore, and I think that's still related because men used to want to go and get resources. Why? Resources for a family. If they don't want a family, they're not motivated to get more resources than what it takes to survive for them. And even that, they're barely wanting to do. Because what's the purpose? What's the why? And I don't know. I liked the angle that Chris Williamson took it at the end, talking about, get up off the couch, join the pickleball thing. I think he had already skipped to men are in crisis and they need to get out, do something for themselves, force themselves to meet other people, be active. And I'm glad he said that because I think he's right. There's so many of you out there that are going through the same exact thing. I swear, age 35 to 50, I feel like every single man's living in hell. I mean, they're just, it's just it's a generation, old millennials and younger Gen Xers that are just being obliterated by the results of feminism and the sexual revolution and the government successfully doubling the workforce. So women now have to work. Well, they don't have to, but it's difficult. It's difficult. Some of them much more have to than did before, for sure. So it's not good. And you know what? I'm not gonna be so black-pilled. Just gonna say I'm glad they're talking about it. They just keep on talking about it. But I also do feel like I need to watch Jordan Peterson now because I need to hear what I a little more what I know is going on. It's like demographic statistician guy, not quite so connected. But again, that's that generation. It's like you guys caused this and you have no idea. You're like, you set the fire and you're like, that's weird. It's warm over here and kind of bright. It's like you set the fire. You were the ones that chose, those were the women that chose to put their kids in daycare and think, nothing will happen. They're not going to feel rejected. They're not going to feel rejected and, be kind of neglected as kids when they come home and they're the only ones there for several hours. That's fine. Gen X is fine. We're not weird. And then the kids, we had, good Lord. Anyway, that's my little demographic spiel. Thanks for joining me on this one. I hope you guys have a great night. Please don't forget to hit like, and it helps the algorithm. YouTube's not always my biggest fan. And I want to keep people seeing videos so that they know they're not crazy, and they know they're not the only one. Because I've been told it helps. So see you guys on the next one.